Welcome to the Wander Mode podcast, where we celebrate the fearless spirit of women embracing life's wanderings. Where every story is a spark of inspiration and reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful moments happen when we simply embrace wherever the journey may lead. If you're anything like me and you've started a business in the last handful of years, you have probably been on the roller coaster that is marketing. For any new entrepreneur, I think you feel like you have to be the one to do it all, right? The sales and the creation and the marketing and managing your financial situation behind the scenes, because let's face it, you don't have any extra dimes to spare while you're trying to stand up this business. And for me, I wasn't even on Instagram in particular prior to starting this business. And of course, I get into it and I start creating some reels and some hard posts and some stories once I actually taught myself what those were. And what I quickly recognized is it is so hard to get in front of people in a few different ways. One, for the right people to find you, but two, to just show up on social media and put yourself out there. And we often think that social media is our only marketing tool. I think that there are a lot of coaches out there that direct people toward using things like Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. as their marketing quote unquote strategy. And what we often fail to realize is there are a lot of other solutions to consider, but I think they're often overlooked. And today I talk with Lopuch about sending cold emails and how this particular marketing strategy has been so incredibly successful for her that even years later, she continues to use this same strategy in her business. So I can't wait for you to hear our conversation, hear from a real mom, a real business owner, what it's like to use a marketing strategy other than social media. And hopefully these little tidbits of information will have you coming away recognizing that you can be so much more in control of the marketing side of your business. You just have to think about it from a little bit of a different lens. Take a listen. Hi, Laura. I think that our conversation is going to be super juicy from like the mom entrepreneur side, but also giving us some real practical advice, hopefully, on how to get ourselves in front of people when we have a business. So I'm looking forward to seeing where the conversation goes.
Me too. I'm really excited to be here, Julie. It'll be fun.
Let's jump into just how are you coming into the conversation?
That's like a good question. That's what I always ask myself, like every minute. Where am I? What am I doing? So basically, where I am right now is I got a good night's sleep last night. The first one in a while. My 4-year-old, his body clock has started to be programmed to wake up about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and he comes into cuddle and then he goes back to bed, but he sometimes doesn't go back to sleep. And so the next day is really tricky. And yesterday I bought him and my 8-year-old weighted blankets. They're like 5 pounds each. And they both slept with him last night. And the 4-year-old slept beautifully, like a dream. It was amazing. So maybe the weighted blankets are the cure for like this months-long insomnia phase that he's been going through. Maybe it's too early to tell. I'm hoping that the phase is ended and the weighted blanket is the start of a new chapter. Yeah.
When you find those solutions and then you're like, wow, this worked really once. It's like that knock on wood moment of like, I almost don't want to say out loud that it worked because we still have like several nights to go before I'm like, yep, we're in the clear.
Yeah, I know. It's like that first night experiment. Like, what if? And then I'm like, don't tell anyone, but this might be working. Don't let my kid know.
Right. I also have a 4-year-old, and it's funny that you're talking about this sleep schedule change because she used to go to bed like clockwork at like 7:30, and we started seeing that she was staying up. Like we'd put her in the room
Mm.
at 7:30 and then she wasn't falling asleep until like 9 or 9:30. So we've had this bedtime shift for the first time. She's not waking up in the middle of the night, knock on wood, but just a big shift just in how late she sleeps in and how late she goes to bed. It's really nuts. It throws you off.
It does. It does. And especially harder with like the late bedtimes. Like in our family, we have tried to keep early bedtimes, mostly so that mom can get some work done after bedtime happens and mom and dad can have some time to ourselves without kids constantly interrupting and, that whole rigmarole.
Yes, they don't often understand that needed time at the end of the evening to even have a reset for the next day, like from a house perspective, dishes, all the
Yeah,
things.
exactly. Like the work goes on even though you go to bed, kiddo. Like
Yeah.
it's not just mom and dad having fun.
I wish, right?
Right?
I think that's a good segue. I know that you build this business with little ones at home. So I want to
Mhm.
hear a little bit of that backstory of what was life like prior to building this business,
Mm.
and then what compels you to want to build a business on top of having little ones at home.
Yeah. In short, why are you so crazy? No.
Right, exactly.
What are you
I
doing?
shouldn't say that. I'll let you say that
But
though.
yeah, I'll say that. I'll go there. Yeah, so before kids, I had started my business and I'd been doing it for about a year. So before that, I worked full time as a paralegal at a law firm. It was a fantastic job until it wasn't, until the next step was you can go to law school and be a lawyer. And I was like, no, thank you. So I ended up quitting kind of in a fiery rage, burned all the bridges, and started my own business. And at the time I started, I had like one client that paid me $200 a month on a good month. Didn't have any other leads, didn't have any other clients. And I had to figure out a way to get clients quickly and in an industry that I didn't have connections in. I didn't have a referral network or anything. And I didn't have a budget for, like, say, ads or anything like that. So I had to be really scrappy. I had to be determined. And so I started sending cold emails. And it took about 3 months of sending cold emails. And they were a rough 3 months. Like, I'll be honest with you. It was a feeling of trial by fire, but this also feeling like if I quit now, I might be 2 steps away from the finish line. So I can't give up now because it might actually be working behind the scenes. I just don't know yet. And it was working behind the scenes. It was about in month 4 that I started getting good traction with the cold emails, ended up signing a $20,000 client, and that became my client for the next about year. And then that kind of takes us actually through my pregnancy. And the next year, I was looking down the road of maternity leave as an entrepreneur. How do you do that? What do you do? And taking time off, how do I manage that? And also, like, that big identity shift of becoming a mom on top of this previous identity shift of becoming an entrepreneur. So it was like stacking all these big shifts on top of each other. That was a little bit rocky for sure, trying to navigate what that looks like and how to get through that. And then, like, fast forward a couple of years, I think my son was about 1, and I started realizing, like, this method I had of sending cold emails, which I want to pause real quick and define what a cold email is, because you
Yeah.
might have something else in your head. A cold email is basically an email that you send to a stranger asking them to take this specific action that you want them to take, not the action that maybe they want to take, or another action like click delete or whatever, but the action that you want them to take. And so I realized that my approach to cold emails was not only effective because it landed me a $20,000 client, a handful of smaller clients, but it was also very, very different from the approach that was commonly taught as cold emails, which is kind of like this spray and pray numbers game where you send like thousands of cold emails so that the math on the other side, your conversion rate, works out to be like 2 new clients, right? Like, an example is you send like 10,000 cold emails and you end up booking like 10 sales calls, and then you get like 1 new client out the other end, right? My approach was way different. It was an authentic, human driven, connection driven approach where it was like actually making a connection with the other person. And I only had to send about 5 to 10 of these cold emails in order to accomplish the outcome I wanted. So maybe that was booking 2 new clients a big way that I started using these cold emails is actually in creating strategic partnerships and referral partnerships, where a lot of times I was using the cold email to unlock access to someone else's audience where a big pool of my ideal clients was hanging out already. So I didn't have to go and find all my ideal clients. I could just go fish in this one pond where all the people I wanted to reach were already hanging out. And then I got to borrow all this like know, like, trust factor and magic fairy dust from my partner because all those people in that pool already trusted my partner. So then they would also trust me. That's a really
Mhm.
long version.
So there's a lot to unpack there. And one
Yes.
thing I want to go back to before we unpack the cold email stuff was, can you give us a little more detail about what that was like, choosing to step away from that job and then sending those cold emails and that wait time between I've just walked away from this income. I'm going to have maternity leave, in which I think sometimes people often think, oh, but you're an entrepreneur. You can just take the time off, right? But as you said, you're making $200 a month, which, as we all know, sitting here is not going to pay the bills. So tell us a little bit more about the mindset and the struggle, and as a family, how you navigated that step away from solid income, $200 a month, waiting to land that client, hopefully thinking that this strategy might work.
Yeah, so there was definitely a year gap between walking away from my job and having that $200 a month client. Then I signed a $20,000 client and that contract ended and then I had maternity leave. So there was kind of a break at the end of that contract with the client. But then I was still kind of in the same boat of I have to get a client. And now I have a newborn and now working 8 hours a day like I did a year ago when I was newly pregnant as a first time entrepreneur, that's not a possible option. Like I can't just sit at my computer for 8 hours a day and baby, I hope you fend for yourself. Good luck. I now had like two big attention energy suckers in my life, to put it the nicest way possible. But
Love it.
they both needed energy and attention to grow. And so it was like, I was looking at both of them going, which one can I put on a reduced diet? And the business was the obvious option for lots of different reasons, moral options included. One of the big reasons why I wanted to be an entrepreneur was because I wanted to be able to stay at home with my kids. I wanted to be the one to hang out with them. Research has showed that kids kind of end up in the same boat mentally and physically, whether or not they go to daycare, whether or not a parent stays home with them. And so it was like a purely selfish reason for me to want to stay at home with my kids. Like I wanted to be the one to harvest all those little childhood memories and be the one like witnessing their first step and watching them fall out of the tree in the backyard and, like all of those. I wanted to be that one there. And so it was, how do I find the balance between making it so that I could still have this business, which gave me energy and a space to go and be someone who wasn't a mom, tap into my prior identity as someone who isn't a mom, a separate identity, still use my brain in a way that's not related to kids, but also have that ability to be there to witness them growing up. And so I decided to put my business on I call it the Napa Valley system, but it's basically what's the least amount of energy and input that I can put into my business to yield great results. And the name comes from the idea of Napa Valley wines. They actually put the grapes on a really reduced water restricted diet. So the less water the grapes get, the better the wine on the other side gets. So I applied that strategy to my business. Like, what is the least amount that I can do to get the biggest result? That I can have that like space and capacity, not just mentally, but also like physically and emotionally to be able to be there for my kids.
I really appreciate what you're talking about with trying to find a way to honor both identities, one as an entrepreneur and one as a mom. I think so often we get into this mindset of it has to be all or nothing. Like I'm either all in on motherhood or I'm all in on entrepreneurship or it's nothing, kind of nothing at all. And it really is possible to do both. it doesn't mean that both are going to have equal parts of you, but like you said, you had to figure out a way to be able to get what you wanted as a mom, but also be able to realistically have this business continue to grow and give it the energy it needed. But you found a way to do it on autopilot, which obviously kids on autopilot is a lot harder. So it makes a lot more sense to figure out autopilot strategies for your business.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's the part where the cold emails came into play, is that I figured out that using cold emails either to get new one-to-one clients or to borrow someone else's audience and then tap into their big pool of potential clients and leads was a really smart way to leverage the small amount of time and energy that I had for my business, and it gets fantastic results out the other side. In fact, this is the marketing strategy I figured out in year probably 2 of my business, and I've just refined and honed it over the last 7 years because I've been in business 9 years. And so this is still my number one marketing strategy. I've dabbled in other ones, but they just haven't produced as great an ROI or that fantastic wine out the other side as these cold emails do.
So, can you tell me a little bit about some of the strategies that you have dabbled in that haven't turned out as strong of an ROI? And the reason I'm curious about this is because oftentimes I feel like the go to marketing strategy is we'll just go out on Instagram, right? You
Yep.
just need to be on
Yep.
Instagram. You need to be posting. Here's the algorithm,
Yep.
that sort of thing. So, I'm curious, what strategies have you tried that, in comparison to this cold email strategy, just haven't been as strong?
Yeah, I love this question. Basically, how much time do you have? I've tried a lot of strategies. I tried Instagram. I gave it a whole 90 days. They say it takes about 90 days to get an ROI. I was like, all right, cool. Start of the year, let's do it. I buckled down, I did the thing, and I ended up having to hire another VA to manage the thing. And I didn't get any clients out the other end. So I actually ended up having to spend more time, spend more money to make the system even up and running. And then I still didn't get any. I don't even think I gained more new followers in that time. I've done blogging on my site. I've repurposed content, emails. The other consistent strategy that's kind of running in the background is I do send 2 emails a week to my email list, but I grow that email list from the partnerships, again, from the cold emails that I'm sending. So that's the main way that people come into my world, is sign up to my email list. And then I nurture that audience very much behind the scenes through twice a week emails. And what else have I done? I've tried posting on LinkedIn. I've tried a lot of these different posts on social media, posts on Twitter before it was X or whatever, posts on LinkedIn. And then I evaluated do I have the capacity to start a podcast? Do I have the capacity to edit a podcast? No. And then because I don't, I'm not going to start it. And then do I have the capacity to start a YouTube? Or does just sitting with that feeling feel like, oh, I just don't want to? It's like emptying the dishwasher. Come on, I have to do it again. This is horrible. Can't it just empty itself? I would prefer something like that. A lot of times when I'm hearing, especially mom entrepreneurs, given this advice of just go post on Instagram, it feels so defeating because you don't need another energy suck in your life. And that's really what Instagram is. It's the most demanding, high maintenance child that you can ever think of adding to your group. And then you have to constantly please it. Otherwise you fall out of disfavor and then your business doesn't get any new clients. And that's one of the things I really like about cold email, is this ability to drop it. If I'm feeling too much, too overwhelmed, it's just a really busy time. And then I can pick it back up later and then I can drop it again. It's like a bouncy ball. It's not a glass ball. And I really like that. I don't get penalized for not showing up. I'm consistent, but I am not consistent every single time. I can drop the ball and then pick it back up on the bounce.
Oh my goodness. I love so much of what you just said. The biggest thing that I think resonated for me was this idea that Instagram is just this high maintenance child that is constantly needy, but just when you think that you met the need, it asks you for something different, right? And
Yeah.
but you don't even really fully understand what the something different is. So then you have to kind of play that game to see if you you can do it, versus it feels like the strategy that you have found, it's consistent, it is effective, and you have a plan. And like you said, if you don't nurture it constantly, it's still effective when you pick it back up again. And I think that that's the hard thing for working moms, specifically with social media, is
Yes.
it takes a lot of time to create content to go on there, but then also the distraction factor. Whereas I would assume with the cold email process, you're just in your email inbox, like, and you're just sending things. You don't have a distracting feed or other videos that are trying to capture
Mhm.
your attention and all the stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you bring up is there's minimal distractions where you're doing it. And for me personally, I actually will write the draft inside of 750words.com, which is fantastic, especially if you're trying to create written content, because it's basically just a distraction-free space, white page to type. And then once you reach 750 words, which is your goal for the day, confetti rains down on your screen. You feel really good. You feel accomplished. You've done the thing. Get a little green check mark, and it's like it's gamified. It's super fun. So I'll write drafts inside of there. So I'm not even actually in my inbox until the moment I'm ready to send the cold email. And so that's even more to your point. Like there are no distractions unless I'm doing some research. And even then, it's like I'm involved in finding out who this person is. So there's that inherent curiosity that's provoked, kind of like looking up your high school boyfriend, like, what's he doing? Like, who's he married to? How many kids does he have? It's that kind of feeling in the research. And that keeps you on track and less distracted. Yeah.
And it feels a little more like you're attempting to build a community
Mhm.
rather than just, I am randomly putting myself out there hoping that someone sees me on social media. Like you're intentionally building a connection. So tell me a little bit more about how you found your people to cold email, because I'm assuming it's not just going to be anybody in the city that you live in, right?
Yeah, so it really depends on the type of cold email that you're sending. If you're sending like a cold sales email to get a new one-to-one client, you're looking at that person and like, do they have the problem that I can solve? And then you actually take them through a pre-qualification process, unbeknownst to them. But you're also looking to see, do they actually have this problem? Can they afford what I want to charge based on these outside kind of tickers for their business? Are they charging enough on their client side for their clients or their students to be able to afford my rate? So you're really setting yourself up for success in your research. That's the primary reason for research, is pre-qualification, to see if this is actually a good fit, so that when you get to the sales call, you're feeling really strong and confident that like this person has this problem. They really do want to solve it. They can afford what I want to charge. And here, let me like help you out with that problem. And it's going to cost X, Y, and Z. And it's a really easy process. But then if you're sending those cold emails to create those partnerships, it's still a process of, do they have the problem? Do I have a solution? And like, just take this podcast interview, for example. Like, you were looking for podcast guests. That was your problem. And I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. I bet there's people in her audience that need a new way of marketing, a more sustainable way of marketing. And cold emails is that way. So I need to talk to her people. Like, I have a solution for this. So you
Love
see how
that.
I'm kind of lining things up and really looking at it through the lens of problem and solution, which also takes away that like whole feeling of salesy and sleaziness. And it's just a transaction. It's not. Like, you have this problem, I have a solution, and we can come together and create this really cool kind of synergy between those two things. Yeah.
Well, and it feels just so much more proactive, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think it instills a lot more confidence because, like you said, you have already identified that you have the solution that this person or connection is looking for. Whereas again, and I'll speak for myself because wasn't even on Instagram until October. And it feels like you're kind of just like tossing stuff out there and you're kind of like, well, I hope I'll be the solution for somebody. But that brings about a lot of insecurity because then when you aren't getting the followers, you aren't getting the DMs, then you start to believe like, well, maybe I don't have a solution for
Mhm.
these people, or I don't have the right thing that they're wanting. Whereas what you're doing is you're putting yourself in the driver's seat of, I've already done the footwork to determine that I already know I can help this person. I'm just putting myself in front of that person, not just this generalized audience.
Exactly. And I think that kind of goes into this big lie that we've all been told by the social media platforms is as entrepreneurs, you're not allowed to be in control of your business. And I think that is a complete myth. And I really believe that you can captain your own ship. And by captaining your own ship and pointing it in the direction that you want to go, not only do you grow confidence, but you also feel way more secure because you're the one in control. You're not just like crossing your fingers and hoping that this post reaches that person by some magical AI algorithm on the back end. You're like actually taking the action to go seek that person out, which both the action builds the confidence, which then brings about a result. And then that's kind of just like this regenerating flywheel where it just starts to feel really good. And then you're not self-doubting, you're not procrastinating, you're not feeling insecure. You show up more confident on sales calls, you show up more confidently in your business. It's just like this really good system to be in.
And we know that that confidence piece is so crucial, and it can be hard to put that confident face on all the time. But it is so important because if you don't act like you're confident, if you don't act like you have the solution, then it makes you appear less able, I think, to solve someone's problem. And then they have doubt in your ability, even if you are the most qualified person in the room. It's
Yeah.
just like how you show up to an interview.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that.
So, one of the big things that is on your website that really stuck out to me was in 12 hours a week, right? Like, I'm able to generate connections, increase my ROI, that sort of thing. What for you became the time balance, I guess, between this is my time as a mom and this is my time as an entrepreneur? And do you find that there are days where it has to be more than that? Or do you have very hard lines drawn in the sand of this is what I can give to this? So this is why like this 12 hours is important.
Yeah, this is a really good question. The short answer is I came upon the 12 hours after lots of years of experimenting. Like I worked longer hours, I worked shorter hours. Most of the time during the day, my availability is strict, and it's because of nap times. That's basically it. Like you guys have quiet time, you guys have nap time, and this is mommy's work time. This is my regenerative time, right? And then I do work on weekends. Like I don't want to put it out there that I only work 12 hours a week and I take weekends off and blah, blah. Like that's nonsense. Sometimes work overflows on Fridays, like when we're recording this, my husband's home. And so if I have things that I can't be interrupted for, I'll schedule them on Friday and he can be the primary parent for a while. I do usually work at night, but only for like an hour. So really the 12 hours came about from a lot of experimentation of can I get what I need done in 10 hours a week? No, I need to add more. Is 15 too much? Yep. So we got to dial it back. So like in 12 hours, admittedly, is a little bit of a marketing spiel where it's just different enough that it catches your eye. But on the back end, truthfully, it really is about 12 hours a week, give or take. But yeah, it just came about from a lot of experimentation on if this is working, do I like this? And a lot of times after the first year, after adding a baby to the mix, that first year of baby's life, I tried to give myself more grace in how I show up to my business. So I actually cut things down way more drastically, especially for maternity leave. Like I'll take that time off and then moving back into work, like adding it slowly and slowly, gradually building up to the normal 12 hours a week, but not jumping right in. I tried that and it didn't work out very well. So how can I respect this first year of baby's life? Things are changing so quickly. How can I be more available for that? And then as baby gets more independent, I can start slowly adding my independence back into the mix as well.
It's kind of like a catch and release model
Yeah.
of, okay, I'm going to try this, but if this doesn't work, I'm going to throw that back. Okay, now let's try this other amount of time and see if that works a little bit better. I think part of the reason that resonated for me in particular is that my husband and I did what is now our full-time business, but we did it as a side hustle for 10 years on top of full-time jobs and a kid. And that's what we teach people is that this is a doable business to build in addition to having that steady Eddie income, right? And it's a handful of hours a week. And this is kind of what you need to expect. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, like you're saying. But I think that that's why that stuck out to me so much is because I think there's this fear sometimes of going into entrepreneurship because it's like, then I have to do that full time, but I can't do that full time. But then how do I gradually release myself into that? And as you're seeing and looking at your model, it just felt doable, I guess, for like the average mom who needs a small amount of time versus just saying this has to become my full time job right now.
Yeah, and it goes back to that both and mentality. Like you can figure out what works for you. One thing
Mhm.
that's helped me in figuring out that both and is realizing Parkinson's law, which says that the work will expand given the container you provide for it. So, what if you flip it on its head and say, I have this much time and this much work? How do I either get rid of some of the work? Is it actually needed? Is it actually a priority? Or do I just think it's a priority, or is it just keeping me busy? And then now I have a more manageable workload, but I still have like this tight constraint around time. What if I can get it done faster? What if I can make a game out of it? What if I can set the timer? And today I do it in 10 minutes, but tomorrow maybe I can do it in 9. And so, what if you can play with the boundaries a little bit? And that tends to open up creativity and really cool solutions to the problems. And I think that's another big framework of my model of how can you play within those more rigid boundaries of I have this amount of time. And to be honest, having kids is like the biggest productivity hack I've ever encountered. Because if you know you have 15 minutes to get this thing done, you're not procrastinating. Your fingers on keyboard, your head down, you're blocked
Mhm.
out, you're getting it done. And so I have to say, I've become way more productive since adding kids to the mix. And sometimes I look back at my years before kids and I'm like, what did I do with that luxury of so much time? I just wasted it.
I have caught myself thinking the same thing. I genuinely thought I was a busy person
Yeah.
prior prior to
No.
having a third body living in our house that has her own schedule and needs and things like that. And yeah, it is definitely a shift for sure. But I totally agree with you though on finding ways to use the time that you have. And I think too the key there is focused time. I've been seeing so many reels and different things talking about how we give time to our kids, but it's distracted time. So it's not actually
Oh,
full quality time. And so, can you give your kids that 10 minutes and put the device down? Can you
mhm.
leave the list behind and go out and play for 5 minutes because that's what you have to give? But at least it's like quality, uninterrupted time. And I think the same needs to be true for our businesses as well. Is that I think sometimes we think that took way longer than it should have or whatever, but were you actually focused? Were you actually
Yes.
100% there, or were your kids playing next to you asking for snacks while you're trying to send that email? So then, of course, it took longer. Versus, like, can you partner with a mom across the street to do kid swapping? Like, I'll take your kids for 30 minutes today, you take my kids for 30 minutes on Thursday, and I'm going to use this 30 minutes to crush through X, Y, or Z. But that's way more focused time than 30 minutes where your brain is going in and out of a task.
Yes, definitely. I totally agree.
Okay, I want to go back to your system. So, how do you work with clients? Like, what are their struggles?
So, a lot of times I'm working with freelancers, consultants, coaches, small marketing agency owners and founders. And I work with them either in a self guided program where they go through and learn the process of sending cold emails. And then they also get some support where they can ask a question once a month of me. Or I'm working with those small marketing agency owners inside a group coaching program where it's like a 90-day accelerator. And we're focused on getting them their next 5-figure client in that 90 days and building out more of this referral partnership system to run in the background so that they don't have to start a YouTube channel or start dancing on TikTok or whatever the newest weird, crazy social media phase is.
I love that. So, you have a little bit of a group coaching model where you're a little more one on one directly
Yeah.
with people. And then there's more of an independent model of I can still pop in and ask questions, but I'm doing this on my own.
Yeah, exactly.
And how did you get to deciding that those were the options that you were going to provide? Because I think that's oftentimes a question that we don't ask enough is what did you start with offering and how did you get to what you offer? because as you're building a business, you're going to have loads of options, online courses and group coaching programs and Facebook pages and communities and a subscription model or YouTube or podcast. Like there's so many different ways that you can reach your ideal clients or provide them with the systems that they need. So where did you start and how did you land on where you're at?
Yeah, and I think it's really important that you're asking this question to give that background into the journey. So I started for the first 4 years of my business doing a lot of private client work, one-on-one with clients, doing the work for them. And I had like a VIP day where I would come in and create all the emails, do all the things for them. I also had a couple of retainer clients, and I realized quickly I didn't like the retainer clients so much at that phase of where I was in my business and where I was as a parent as well. So this is basically from my first kid. I have 3 kids. They're 8, 4, and 2. And
Okay.
so for the first half of my first son's life, I was doing a lot of one-on-one work. And then I found out I was pregnant with son number 2 and realized I had to figure out a way to make money without actually showing up to my laptop. And that's when I created my self-guided course. And it's since been updated and all that jazz, but that was the foundation of that online course was about 4 years ago. And so then I started building out the funnels and how to get people in and all that stuff. And then as more kids got added to the mix, I realized energetically my capacity and my drive wasn't really there to work with one-on-one people, but everybody was having kind of the same struggles. And so I was like, well, that sounds like a group coaching. And I really like the interaction and the teaching part of it. I like that coaching aspect. And so that was a little bit before son number 3 joined the mix. So about 3 years ago, I started the group coaching. And usually each offer started as an experiment. What if I tried this? What if I just took 2 clients on like this? And then to see if I liked it, if it fit, if it didn't fit. And into even the contracts with my one-on-one clients, I always wrote in an exit door clause where if I was feeling stuck or it was too much or it was actually stressing me out more than it was benefiting me, there was a way out. So I wasn't stuck, which helped me a lot mentally because then it was, if this isn't working, I can fire this person. I can get rid of this relationship and then regroup and then figure something else out. Because like you said, there's so many different options, but you don't know which ones you like or which ones work for you or your personality or your clients or your capacity until you try one and just like a mini experiment. And then did it work? Did I like it? Do I want to keep it?
And I think as you pointed out too, as you were adding kids to your family, your capacity can always change.
Yeah.
That's the reality. When you are your business, what worked for you however many years ago, and now you've added kids to the family and you have young kids again, or a breastfeeding baby, or you have a kid in elementary school. So now your times are different because of drop off and pickup and all this stuff. That's a constantly shifting thing. And it's the great part about working for yourself is that you can make those adjustments. But I think sometimes we don't give ourselves the permission to make those adjustments. We start with this thing and think, well, this is what our business is, or this is what worked. But you don't know that by changing something to better fit your life, it could also be the right solution for your client. And I also believe that at the end of the day, when you're prioritizing your family and what works for you and your life, you're going to show up better no matter what for the client. So it's important to let those shifts happen and figure out how things can look different based on the capacity that you can give.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that in that, you're actually touching on like an element of self-care and how can you really take better care of yourself so that you can be a better entrepreneur, so that you can be a better mom, so that you can be a better partner to your significant other. Because I've noticed that if mom's stressed, the whole house is stressed. Everybody's yelling at each other. And so I've actually said no to several lucrative client projects because it felt like too much. I can foresee a lot of late nights. I can foresee a lot of tight deadlines, and that is just not worth it to me at this point in my life. And so that might change later down the road. A big part of how I view my business is I'm in a phase or a season. And right now, it's a phase of like little kids. And in about 2 to 3 years, all my kids will be in school. And so that will be a whole new shift. I don't know what it will look like, but I'll figure it out when I get there. And so giving myself permission to enjoy where I'm at right now and not try to have to like hurry up and get to the next thing just because so-and-so is at that next step or this big person's at that next step. Like what's right for them might not be right for me, and what's right for me might not be right for them. And that's okay. And I'm okay with that.
Even if it takes getting one of those extra large Post-it notes and like having it on your computer or a mirror or something about coming back to your why. Like we all have a why. We decided to get into entrepreneurship or trying something for ourselves. For you, it was that you didn't want to go to law school. For me, I had this moment where I was so late getting to school because my daughter had a blowout in the car. And then my students are frustrated with me because I'm coming in and they can't go where they need to go. And it was just this moment for me of, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And I'm trying to be at school by 7:15 in the morning, which means I'm dropping my kid off at daycare at 6:45. All the stuff, like we all have our why. But I think what often happens is you go do this because of your why and you get caught up in, but I have to make money, but I have to do all the things, but I have to like grow this fast. But if it doesn't work in year one, then I need to let it go. And now I'm back to a W-2 job. We have all these things that we tell ourselves. And I got caught in that, I would say several months ago, of this cycle of forgetting why I was doing this in the first place and being so stressed out over building my own business. I wasn't even enjoying the reality of what that was doing for me. And as you pointed out, you're able to enjoy this because you set those boundaries, because you keep coming back to your why. Does this serve me right now, even if that means letting go of a big client? Because if you lose sight of that, why not just go back and work for someone else again? Why not just give up all those freedoms, because you're just taking those freedoms away from yourself when you get caught in the stress wheel?
Definitely. And I think it's super important to examine the stories that you're telling yourself. And I think that because we're entrepreneurs, we get almost caught between two different worlds of what all the other entrepreneurs are doing and then the other people in our life who are W-2s, perhaps. And it feels very constricting because it's that either or mentality, which is really harmful, actually, because you're not allowing space for problem solving and creativity, and you feel constricted, which doesn't help with your sales, because as soon as you like clench down and feel constricted, you can't show up and be confident, and you can't see other solutions that might be there for you to help this client in a way that's different than what you normally do. You don't feel that like spaciousness and that freedom. But I think it's so important to examine, what is the story that I'm telling myself? And is it actually true or is it not true? And I got stuck telling myself some untrue, nasty stories in the first year, 2 years of my business on, I can't be a good mom if I'm working. And so like, where does that leave me? I'm never going to be good because I want to work. And so how can you stop telling yourself those stories or find a both and? Like for me, that story changed into, I'm a good mom when I have fixed time and capacity to work. And so I have to make that time and capacity because then I can show up and be a better mom. But you have to start looking at the stories you're telling yourself, because those are usually the hiccups, the roadblocks that are keeping you stuck.
So much wisdom in that. This will kind of be a two-part question. So the first one is, what would you love to tell the woman out there listening that is maybe on the cusp of wanting to do her own thing and leave behind a W-2 job or whatever? And then the second part is, what would you want them to know about the value of the cold email should she decide to start it?
Okay, so the first question, if you're on the cusp of wanting to leave your W-2, the time will never be right. You should just do it. That's what I wish I had done a long time ago, other than letting it go for so long and then allowing it to kind of just blow up. And it was a bad situation. And I should have just left a lot sooner. If you have that desire within you, trust that that desire was planted inside of you for a reason and that you are the person who can make it come true. I think that above all else. It's going to feel scary. It's going to feel risky. That's normal. It's part of the process. It's just helping you step into your next identity. And then the second question about the cold emails is, there's definitely a story around cold emails that you are probably believing, and it's probably a lie. And that lie is that you cannot take control over your client acquisition. You are not allowed to pick who you work with. That is not a possibility for you as an entrepreneur, and that's all a lie. You have the power, you have the control. You just have to pass through that little bit of an initiation fear of, Can I do it? And it's just like going to the gym and picking up a weight for the first time. You're just testing your muscles. So I really believe that every business at every phase can use cold emails and should, because it not only gets you into more conversations, which create more sales, but it also strengthens you as a business owner, because then you have more chances at selling, which strengthens your sales conversations and your selling. But it also helps you refine your offers, because if you get in a conversation, there's been lots of times I've gotten into conversations and they're like, that's not what I'm looking for. And I'm like, oh, well, tell me more. What are you looking for? Because I might be able to go create that thing, right? And then a whole new offer comes about. But really, cold emails are probably the marketing strategy that you're looking for and you're just too scared to take action on. Go take action. It's okay that you feel scared. And it's okay that you can take action when you're scared. You're strong enough and you can do it.
And it literally costs you nothing,
It
right?
does.
I mean, that's kind
Yeah,
of the idea. Other than
that's the other part.
maybe some learning the system, but it costs nothing. It's not even like you're
Yeah.
paying for Google or Facebook ads.
No. Nope, nope. And a lot of times the people that you're looking for, either in new one-to-one clients or in those partnerships, are probably people that you're already aware of. Like the first person that I cold pitched, I'd been on her email list, and she's the one who ended up becoming a client of mine. I'd been on her email list and I was thinking about maybe buying her program. And then I was like, oh, she's got this problem that I can solve. What if I cold pitched her? And it's just that, like, what if? And if you have that, like, what if, you should follow it.
Oh man, so much wisdom. And as we said before we jumped onto the call, you had said, I don't know how we're gonna get get through all this. And case in point, I'm pretty
No,
sure maybe we hit 4
maybe,
questions.
maybe five. I would love to come back on. Your questions were so juicy. And I think it's super important too, because as women, I think that historically, I think it was only in 1975. My date might be a little bit off, but really, my grandmother wasn't even allowed to open her own banking account without a male cosigner. So my mom was the first one in my generation who could do that. And so the fact that we as women are both trying really hard to catch up on just the financial side, but if you weren't allowed to open your own business account, you probably had to have a male business partner as well. So we're also trying to catch up on the business side of things. And I think it's really cool that you're kind of opening the door to all that. And I just think it's really cool. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling behind, give yourself some grace. We have decades, centuries of stuff to catch up on that our male counterparts have mastered time and time again.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think it is the importance in continuing to tell our stories too, is that we have a lot to catch up on, but also because social media and all the things move so fast, it can also make you feel even further behind to the women that I think sometimes we see on social media, because we often only see the easy side, the successful side, the side that's working, the person who already has the 1 million followers, right? It's very easy to then feel like, well, I'll never get to that because here I am with my 100 followers. But hearing stories, I think, from women about where we started, where we are, where we hope to be, I really think that it's so important for us to hear the realistic side too, that we're in the trenches part right now too of building, and not always everything being successful every single time, and having to pivot and what that looks like.
definitely. I would also say with social media, there's the constant need to have to up-level your knowledge skills because they're changing things constantly around the platform. And so what are your time costs involved in having to constantly be re-educating yourself on a platform? I don't know about you, but my Gmail looks the same as it did 7 years ago. I mean, they added a send later feature,
Yeah,
but that
right.
might be about it. Yeah,
It's so true. It's so true. I never even thought about that. And
yeah.
yet it's a
There's
tool that we use every day, but it's effective. It works as it should. They're not playing games of, okay, how what new little tidbit can we put in here today to have them have to try to figure that out?
Yeah, it's the one-time education costs and then it just works. And everybody's used to fielding requests in their inbox. So they're not like on LinkedIn, people's guards are sometimes up on getting pitched, but in the inbox, you're used to getting all sorts of information in all sorts of different ways. And so a lot of times the guards are down and there's tracking that you can install to know if someone opened your email or didn't open your email. There's a lot of fun things that you can do to experiment. I think my favoriteest part about the cold emails is that it doesn't take that much time. and you can get like really good ROI out the other side. For example, over 1 3-month period a couple years back, I just focused on cold emailing to build partnerships. And over a 3-month period, I saw a 230% increase in email subscribers and a 39% increase in revenue. But that's not the coolest part. The coolest part is that those partnerships that I built about 2 years ago in that little 3-month experiment are still sending me leads today because they're evergreen, because they live on in someone else's environment. And then I still reap the benefits. It's plant it once and then I get rewards for many years to come.
Yeah, the tree just keeps on growing as long as
Yeah.
you water it and you touch in here and there and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. It sounds so amazing. So if someone wanted to work with you, what are the handles or the best way to get a hold of you?
Not social media.
Oh, we're
Go
not
to
going to
my
find you on Instagram.
No, go to my website, lauralopuch.com, and then go to /everything. You'll see all the different ways that you can work with me, or I would strongly recommend get on my email list. That's where I share the best stuff. And that's the easiest way to get all the gold.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Julie. I loved all the questions. They were so good. So good. Thank you.
Thanks for wandering with me today. If you were inspired by this episode and think it would ignite a spark in a friend, don't hesitate to share. And if you're craving more from the Wander Mode community, hop on over to Instagram at WanderModeCo. Meet you in the next episode, and until then, wander on.